chronically injured climber? Have you jacked up a pulley, a shoulder, a bicep tendon, and you're asking yourself, man, all of those healing peptides sure seem cool. They sure seem like they could do some miraculous stuff. And even though they're untested in humans, you're still thinking to yourself, I think the juice is worth the squeeze, even though we don't have any long-term data. Well, if you're wild enough to get into experimental peptides to try to treat some chronic injuries, well, this might be the place for you. I'm Adam with Anabolic Climbing, and today we're going to get into the healing peptides BPC157 and TB500. So, if you're new here, don't forget to like and subscribe. These deep dives take time. But yeah, definitely leave something for the algorithm, and let's hop into it. So, BPC157 and TB500 have no long-term data, but the studies on them are nothing short of wild. If you want to know the mechanisms of action, they both have, or what's really interesting about them is both of them encourage angiogenesis. Both of them have some sort of anti-inflammatory properties, which typically isn't useful during the first week of healing, although that's actually where both of these peptides shine. In the case of BPC157, it actually upregulates some growth hormone, or actually impacts the growth hormone axis, and appears to impact IGF-1 slightly, as well as having cytoprotection and basically helping cells under oxidative stress, as well as helping with tenocyte migration and adhesion. So basically, as nutrient delivery gets better to the injured site through angiogenesis, part of the systemic nature of the BPC157 actually helps some of the new tissue adhere well to itself, which is different from the anabolics and basically placing the collagen all over the place. But what about TB500? Well, also angiogenesis based, also has the anti-inflammatory markers, but is also an antifibrotic and basically reduces some of the excess collagen deposition of the myofibroblasts, which is super interesting. And it actually supports tenogenic support with biomaterials to the point where it'll actually assist and improve tendon reconstruction, even in non-biologically identical materials. They did this with like PLGA and PLA, which is basically plastic tendons, in a, I want to say an in vivo cell, and yeah, it was ultimately able to improve the overall connective tissue. But now that we have like a rough idea of the mechanisms, I kind of want to outline the timelines of when you would deploy these compounds. Because if you remember from the growth hormone deep dive, BPC157 and TB500 work well up to a month, 2 months, 3 months, but where they are most effective is week 1. And that's kind of surprising. Typically when you have a catastrophic injury or something pretty severe, you really want to wait for the inflammation and swelling to go down before you start applying treatment, and that doesn't seem to be the case here. So, for example, when you compare it to like treatments with ice, whenever you reduce inflammation, you actually elongate the healing time, and because you're slowing down the body's signals to basically heal whatever is broken. But in this case, as soon as you get hurt, you can throw some of this on there, and it would appear to rapidly increase the healing times. In some cases, up to 30 or 40%, particularly when taken together. Not only that, when compared to the placebo, it actually seems like you get a better outcome for healing. So you keep more muscle, you keep more strength, you keep more tendon in the process, which is pretty bonkers. And by the way, at the end of this video, I'm going to throw in some just off-the-wall examples to both excite you and pump the brakes on how ridiculous some of these compounds are. So, let's just hop into it. For BPC157 and its role in accelerating mucosal skeletal soft tissue healing, we can basically see that, it has the ability to speed up healing, speed up the rates of recovery, and it has huge potential as a promise in therapy to both treat and aid in recovery for hypervascular and hypocellular soft tissues, such as tendons and ligaments, cough, cough, angiogenesis, cough, cough. But we need some more long-term studies on this. As far as the TB500, they basically administered it prior to, or in order to repair an injury on an MCL, which was transected on the day of surgery. They basically gave between 2 to 2.5 milligrams per week, and then tested how strong everything was about 4 weeks after surgery. And the short answer is the tendons were spaced relatively uniformly, but the TB500 rats actually had the tissue significantly increase, but it looks like the mechanical properties were actually higher 4 weeks after surgery than the placebo, which again, pretty consistent with what we would expect here. This was the study that I mentioned earlier, where basically they put on an artificial tendon, slammed them on with some TB500, and you ended up having like an improved tendon structure on an artificial tendon, which is like kind of surreal to say. I don't even know what to say to that. If you are a researcher and you have a potentially better take on how crazy or how not crazy that is, to me that just sounds bananas. But yeah, that just seems to be the nature of some of these compounds. Moving on to BPC157 and its the effects of tendon healing and the outgrowth of the cell and survival. The short answer is, again, the tendon proteins continued to look good and didn't have basically they weren't disorganized or disjointed as you'd expect with anabolics. You were still getting the upregulation of the fibroblasts. You were still getting what are its mechanisms of FAK and paxinolin were essentially dose dependent on the BPC157, and yeah, that's gonna those are going to work both in conjunction with hitting the growth hormone receptor and mildly upregulating some IGF-1. By the way, when I've run some models through ChatGPT, we do know that growth hormone basically helps with healing after a week. So if you were to throw on TB500 and BPC157 for first week, then continue to run those plus growth hormone for weeks 2 through however long it takes you to get injured, you would essentially be having the increase of angiogenesis from all three, the anti-inflammatories from the BPC and the TB. Then you'd have the increased nutrient delivery from the angiogenesis, and with the upregulation in the IGF-1 from the growth hormone, you are cooking with gas. That's, if you had to heal something as soon as possible, that's your cocktail right there. Again, I kind of want to fast forward now to just some of the more ridiculous things that I have seen. And on this one, and this is where I kind of want to pump the brakes, because up until now it's just been like super hyped. These things move nutrient delivery really, really fast. It's definitely going to help you with healing. As far as I understand it, once you encourage angiogenesis, I don't think those veins go away after taking the compound. So you are getting increased rates of nutrient delivery, but an increase in veins and throughout the body, which is great if you're trying to heal or grow tendons. But in the event that you were able to get a cancer over this period, that would be super bad, as they would also benefit from that nutrient delivery system. So please, I say this in everything involving growth hormone, TB or BPC157, these are going to elevate your risks for cancer down the line, and you need to be checked up on. But for this, they had this crazy idea where, oh, wait, if we take TB500, is that a thing that could potentially bring cells back to their embryonic state? And they basically wanted to see if you gave TB500 to organs, would they behave more like they're younger? And apparently the answer is yes, which would mean more cell divisions. And you could start seeing this of like the embryonic expression in the heart, and you sort of compare this to the adult expression, and then they basically give it TB500, and you see how it starts to like multiply and glow. You're seeing the same impacts in both. I don't know if that's going to help with anti-aging like the author suggests, but the flip side is if you're having like a rapid, essentially when you're in an embryonic state, your cells are rapidly dividing, and I don't know if doing that as an adult is inherently good. Like, just because it's a thing that happens doesn't mean it's a thing that is good. And just one other study that caught my attention that I don't know how it pulled up on my feed or whatnot, but essentially there were some folks that were having eye trouble that sort of comes with getting herpes, and it leads to redness, dryness, all sorts of like ocular issues. So their solution was like, oh, let's throw some BPC157 in TB500 in eye drops. And you had like, after 4 to 6 weeks, like 50% 50% of subjects expressed having like more comfort and better resolution of symptoms versus the placebo, which is bananas. So if you're sort of seeing what happens with some sort of cellular division in organs and then the ability to apply it topically, like, this compound is doing some wild stuff that I cannot fully explain how or why it works. But by the way, this isn't the only study that I saw on eyes, for example. There was another one where like folks dealing with like chronic redness or chronic dry eyes using TB500 eye drops that also had like better relief in symptoms versus the control. And, you know, it didn't report an increase in vision outcomes just for comfort, but like, yeah, really powerful stuff. And, you know, it's the kind of thing that I get both really excited and really nervous on, because there's literally no long-term data on this, particularly in humans. There's a bunch of like absolute mad lads that have tried BPC157. I haven't tried TB500 yet, but like, holy smokes. So yeah, whenever I break something next, I'll try running, because initially I've only run BPC solo to treat my tendinosynovitis. And yeah, I was able to knock that out in 4 weeks versus 6, which was cool. It's kind of hard for me in those positions to realize how much better it is, because the heal time is so long and it was such like a common injury. And it's something that I had healed before. So the 2 weeks didn't feel like much of a difference, even though I'm sure it definitely impacted my training. But yeah, I'd be really curious to try something like that next time with TB500 plus growth hormone to see if we could cut that down to like 2 to 3 weeks, because that would be crazy. Not crazy enough to injure myself for it, but good times. Anyway, links to all the studies that I discuss are going to be in the description below. Also, I'm going to start publishing articles in conjunction with my videos on anabolicclimbing.com, which is now currently live. The site's still in its infancy, but please check it out and support the channel. They have our partners such as Anabolic Insight, great place to get blood work. Definitely donated some blood this morning, so as soon as I get that back, I will let you guys know. Code climbing at checkout, and you guys can save up to 70% over labs that you would get from your doctor. But yeah, if you have used BPC157, TB500, or growth hormone, please comment in the comment section down below. If you are chronically injured and you are curious about testing out some of these compounds, throw it in the description below. If you guys do remember from earlier in the year, I tested it on my partially torn bicep tendon. Haven't had issues with it since, but until I get an MRI, I couldn't tell you that it's fully healed. I've tested it on my fingers to see if I could get my middle finger, the bump on there, to heal. The answer was no. But still works, hasn't gotten worse, so that's a thing. Like, I'm not ready to say that these are the miracle cure-all to all of climbers' problems. And unless you fix however you're training, you're going to continue to get repeat injuries, even if you can heal things faster. But, you know, for every... Like, I've also seen some other people have some pretty incredible results, too. Like, anecdotally, I've seen people pinning the tendon itself and having increased healing responses. I've seen folks take it systemically orally. And these are guys with, like, chronic stomach problems that BPC tends to clear up. And while I could not in good conscience recommend running BPC157 year-round, if I had some sort of crippling stomach problem that was debilitating, I probably would. That's where I think the juice would be worth the squeeze. And, you know, if you're coming back from surgery or something, I could definitely make a pretty good faith case for it. But, you know, the only place you can get these are from shady peptide sites on the internet that claim that they test, but you don't really know for sure. And, like, if you guys want to know, I'm more than happy to tell you where I buy my peptides. So far, I've gotten them from either Modern Amino or Omega Aminos, neither of which are paying me to say that. That's just where I've bought mine so far. But, yeah, definitely, like, proceed with caution. Even though the short-term clinical data is bonkers, we still need to wait for some of the long-term data to come back on this. So, if you made it this far, appreciate you guys from the bottom of my heart. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm going to try to get some content coming daily just so that we can get as much possible out there for the climbing community, build the archive of all of the cool compounds that are worth reviewing, and even of stuff that I don't necessarily have a chance to test, I want to at least go through the literature with you guys together so we have an opportunity to, you know, sort of have the theory and how it is on paper versus in practice when I eventually test it out. But that's all for today. I'm Adam with Anabolic Climbing, giving you guys a front double on the way out and wishing you guys happy climbing and happy sending. Big hugs, and I'll see you soon. Take care.